What I think is great work here in looking at fire services and the workplace bullying there. And then also on this panel, we'll hear about IT managers and workplace bullying in that field from two of my colleagues who I have the honor to work with every day here at Shippensburg University. And actually, Dr. Becker and I started at Shippensburg University the same year, and Dr. Catania followed us, I believe, the following year. Is that right, Joe?
About 2 or 3 years later.
Was it 2 or 3 years later? Well, those years went by so fast, I guess that. So, and then things slowed down after that. So, and they've done also outstanding work looking at, I think, almost a polar opposite industry and field. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these findings compare to each other, and then also your experiences and how those relate. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Griffith and his presentation of fire services.
All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity to present to this group. You are so on target. When we looked at this, we started this research. Workplace bullying was not in the forefront of our mind. It was organizational performance. That's what we looked at. And so as you talk about workplace bullying, you get a whole lot more mileage when you're talking to management, when you talk about workplace performance and money that they could lose if they don't step up to try to control workplace bullying, then Peter feels bad, or Sally feels bad. I think if you focus on performance and you focus on the monetary thing, you're going to get a whole lot more mileage. A couple of thoughts I want to start with. One, if you want to know the character of a person, give them power. So keep that one in mind, okay? Second, a leader's job is to put their people in a position in which they can succeed. That's what leaders are supposed to do. Okay? Put your employees in a position where they can succeed. So I just want to give you those thoughts, and we're going to maybe round back to those, because this is a cross-sectional study. It's a survey research. I teach statistics management, emergency management. Dr. Roberts, excellent social science, social work, psychology. Dr. Chief Wakeham, 30 years in the fire service, fire chief. So that's the background of these people. We actually did a study before the one I'm going to show you. It was a 10-question survey, which is why we had such a high level of participation. All right? Because if you're going to take a survey, it's got 65 questions in it. Fewer people are going to take it than if you got a 10-question thing you can do in a minute or two. Right. And the thing that got us was there's an organization called the International Women in Firefighting and Emergency Services. And they put a study on their webpage that was done in 1995, and it had horrible results, okay? It was like painted a really bad picture of females in the fire service. And, you know, we looked at that and thought, my goodness, 1995, surely there's been a study done since then. And yes, there has, and don't call me Shirley, right? That's right. This is the landmark study was actually the 2008 National Report Card Studies, and that was the study that this study I'm going to brief you attempts to replicate, okay? And by the way, just for you researchers out there, less than 2% of all research replicates previous research. Just a thought. You might want to look at what other people have done. Just a thought. Okay. So, in our study, in our little itty-bitty 10-question study that was done before this, we got some really nice statistics. And you kind of look at these numbers, and it paints a really nice picture of people would advise their children to go into the fire service. People would advise females to go into the fire service. 75% of female respondents indicated they gained more acceptance the longer they were on the job. the thing about the fire service is it's a physical thing. Not all men can do it, not all women can do it, okay? But I know you're a firefighter, and thank you for your service. What's your name?
Keith.
Keith? Thank you for your service, okay? Because it's a tough job. Keith signed up for the idea that if there's a fire in a house, he's going to run into it and try to save somebody. Keith knows that when you turn out and you turn out gear and you've got the air pack on, you got the mask on, it's physically demanding.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's about an extra 70 pounds on your body.
Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's a performance adrenaline-based thing. And fire departments spend about 3% of their time actually fighting fires. Most calls go out to emergency, like health calls, like someone fell down in their front yard, they may have a heart attack, 911, car accident, maybe no fire involved, but out there you go. So just to kind of give a background here. But still, real nice here. And when you look at these statistics, they indicate, wow, you know, the slide I just showed you showed a really nice picture of females in the fire service. But here you go with the other side of it. All right? Here you go with the other side of it. And when you look at the bottom line, and you see that it's a small percentage there, 2.3 and 6.8% there, who indicated they had problems with male coworkers or they left due to gender reasons. You know, it's a small number, but it's still a number. Now, being in the military, I never had enough people in my squadron, okay? Never had enough people. We always had too much to do. And so the thing is I can't take that group at table 3 back there and say, you're all under 40, you don't know anything, so we're not even gonna listen to what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna work with these people over here who are more my age, because I'm comfortable with them. Because we're not gonna, you're 29, I know. So you're not gonna produce as much as if you use the entire team. Another analogy, who likes football in here? Okay? Does everybody play quarterback? Is everybody the kicker? Can everybody be the lineman? Can everybody be the wide receiver? So you've got different skills that you mold together from different people to make your organization perform the best. That's what you're supposed to do as a leader, okay? So when you start seeing stuff like this, you start wondering, are we being as efficient in the fire service of using all the talent that we have? So, what we wanted to do, heard about this conference. We thought, well, you know, this goes right into bullying, you know? So, let's see what's going on here. What are the current perceptions? Is it still the same thing as the horror story we read about in 1995? Or even the negative stats we saw in 2008? And have things changed? And this really hurt me when I saw this. Because I was thinking, surely things have changed.
Don't call me Shirley.
And don't call me Shirley, right? Okay? So we kind of looked at this. I used the National Report Card Study as a baseline, kind of replicated that research. And so the scope here, now, this is research, survey research, which means we cannot extrapolate this on all firefighters, okay? The only thing I can generalize to is to tell you that of the people who answered the survey, this many thought that. So let's just put that in perspective. Everybody who did answer, though, was from the United States, okay? And here's the relevance, again. I've only got so much money, I've only got so many people, budgets are being cut, holy cow, how do I make the best use out of my workforce? And if we've got something going on that's a drag on our productivity, why don't we turn around and try to fix that, okay? First we gotta see that there is a problem, then we gotta care enough about it to fix it. That's what we gotta do. So, this is what we're looking at. All right. Now, you've seen, gosh, you know, how many people have talked about this already? I think you talked about this, Kelly. You talked about this. Sabrina. She goes by George, by the way, if you haven't talked to her. George, okay? Lisa talked about this. You know, when you start looking at this, you start seeing how just overall bullying is an issue. Uh-oh. There we go. Failure to work the clicker. And so you can kind of see these statistics that we've been telling each other throughout the entire day. So I'm not going to go word for word on that. And then, you know, if we extrapolate this out, you can see how many millions of people this impacts. And what we're losing is we're losing creative ideas. So if I take table 3 there, people who are, you know, under the age of 40, okay, and I say, your ideas aren't good, you don't know anything, you may be closest to the job. You may have a better idea than I got. If I'm in management, I did that job 15 years ago. The equipment news, everything new. If I don't listen to you, number one, you don't feel appreciated. You don't feel in on things. And read Hershey Blanchard and what they talked about that and its importance to higher level needs for employees, okay? I'm missing out on what you can provide. I'm missing out on what you can contribute. And this is what we're talking about. That's the real opportunity cost that we're losing, okay? So, Hewlett et al., a group of authors, did this landmark study in 2008, 65-question survey. And God bless them, people filled it out. And they had, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people filled this thing out. And they even interviewed people. Look at how many people they interviewed from 48 different states. And it's, holy cow, okay? This is a landmark study. This is the Cadillac of the studies in firefighting so far as bullying goes. And you can kind of see what some of their results were. And those are pretty high percentages. When you look at people who've had problems with their, 85% of those interviewers think they were treated different, okay? This one, folks, imagine yourself walking into a house that's on fire, okay? You don't really know who's in there. You don't really know the structure's going. Houses can go up in 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, they can go up. They say if a fire starts tonight while you're sleeping, you got 2 minutes to get out. So change those smoke alarm batteries, okay? So, look at that one. So I saw that and I thought, no way can that still be true. No way. Because at a minimum, if you're trying to put yourself in a position, your employees in a position to succeed, you gotta make sure they have the right equipment, right? Women tend to be smaller than men. Women need more or different sized equipment, and that equipment sometimes can be expensive. And that's what that gets into. So you can see some of it. But besides the social isolation, the verbal harassment and all that, you see the equipment thing, it really jumps out. And so what we did, our research design, we sent out a survey. SurveyMonkey's a wonderful thing, okay? And, confidentiality, right? We went out through some networks there. National Fire Academy. We also, the International Women in Firefighting and Emergency Services also helped out with this. And we did the survey for about a 4-month period. Okay, so demographic data on the people who responded to the survey. All right, evenly split between men and women. You can see that. You can see the ages. 95% were over 30. Okay. You can see the background there, the demographic background. And 70% had a college degree, and 93% had gone to college, or some college. So you got some solid people answering this thing, and you can see how just some other demographics here.
Are these paid firefighters or volunteers?
I did not give her $20 to ask that question. That's a great question. I was gonna thank you. Firefighting world, 1.2 million firefighters approximately in the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay?
I'm sure you know more than that.
No, if I say something dumb, tell me, okay? Out of that, about a third are in paid positions, okay? So the struggle is to try to get paid positions because they're great. Right. All right. So the hypotheses were this. You know, one is there's going to be a significant difference between those who think there's problems with bullying compared to those who think that there isn't. And you know what? This is going to be different than what they found in that 2008 survey. That's what I thought, okay? Because I'm supposed to be smart, right? Shows you what I know, okay? So the findings were surprising. And there's a couple surprising things in the finding, and I'm just going to be blunt and share them with you, okay? So the first thing is, if you take a look at everybody who answered on the survey overall, people seem to think everything was okay, okay? There wasn't that many problems. So I actually stuck these slides in here. If you just, I think we had, 113? So if you take a look and you put all the surveys side by side, and you kind of see that, yeah, it's like, look at this P column over here. This is the probability of getting these results due to random chance. And if the number's below 0.05, you got a significant difference, okay? So that's a significant difference between those who agree and disagree. But, so the recruiting women, there was a disagreement, but was not significant. And you start looking at some of these. Department takes extra step to recruit minorities. Entry-level physical exam accurately reflected my ability to do the job. Men and women are treated the same during the physical test. You can see most agreed with that. Have you been treated differently due to gender? Half and half, but again, not significant. Different treatment due to race or ethnic origin? There we go. Got a significant difference there. Okay, most disagree. But again, 94% said they disagreed with that. That they did not receive, an informal procedure for gender or race-based complaints. And, 80% or 80 agreed, 32 disagreed. And so, for the most part, you've got either significant agreement here, or you've got, the difference isn't enough to be significant. Now, this is looking at everybody all together in the group of 113. So keep that in mind. Second table involving promotions and development here, you see some more. And supervisor addresses complaints, most agreed. Supervisor addresses complaints concerning race, most agreed. Treated differently due to sexual orientation, most disagreed. Promotions are decided upon fairly, most agreed. Gender is not a barrier to my career development, most agreed. Ethnic origin not a barrier to career development, most agreed. Would you advise a young minority woman to become a firefighter? Most agreed, most would. Would you advise a young white woman to become a firefighter? Most agreed, okay? So you can see, remember that one song, Happy Shiny People Holding Hands? This paints like a great picture. So then I did something different. Do men and women answer this different? So now I'm going to ask you to look at this slide in a different way, okay?
Sorry.
Okay. This shows the difference in our survey of men and women, just the difference in how men and women answered the survey, okay? These first three columns were our survey. These last four columns were the 2008 National Report Card study. And you can see that if you've got high p-values here, that means that our study and the 2008 study agreed that there wasn't a difference. I was hoping there would be. I was hoping things had gotten better, okay? When you also take a look at this, you see how many people agree. My department takes extra steps to recruit women. Only 22% of women agree. Physical exam accurately reflected my ability on the job. 52% of women agree. And you kind of see how, in most part, they were sort of split. When you start getting down here, have you been treated differently due to gender? You got a big difference here, and you see the significance level here. Okay, big difference. Formal procedure for gender and race-based complaints. Again, Big difference here. More men thought that there was a formal procedure. And then this ill-fitting equipment, look at that, okay? Where you've got 80% of women saying, yeah, I had that problem, and only 19% of men. That's a significant difference. So these are just numbers that kind of show you what they were dealing with. Last table, last eye chart for y'all. How we all doing? Y'all seeing the big E on the eye chart? Okay, good. So, again, you start looking at how men and women differ in how they perceive things like, my supervisor does not address complaints concerning gender-related issues. More women, 32% said that, compared to 3% of men. Treated differently due to sexual orientation, again, 33% of women indicated that that happened versus 12% of men. Promotions not decided fairly, 40% of women versus 16% of men. Gender's a barrier in my career development, 44% of women versus 5% of men. This is our study. Do men and women answer different? Yeah. This is compared against the 2008 study. Are we different from them, from the results they got? Sadly, no. Okay? Sadly, not statistically significantly so. So, you know, when you looked at that, we obviously know what the conclusions were just by looking at the numbers. Things haven't changed since the 2008 landmark study. And it's something that we still got to work on. Some conclusions here. There's issues about promotion. There's issues about equipment. It's amazing how men and women perceive this thing different. Firefighting is a difficult career field to break into. You have to prove yourself, do you not? You have to prove yourself. Because the person sitting next to you is going to rely on you knowing your job. And we all went through it, okay? We all went through it. And so it's a tough thing to go into. Another thing I just wanted to point out is that further research needs to look at all these issues again. We need to replicate the study 5-10 years from now to see if anything's getting better. We also, I know I'm over time here, fire chiefs should make sure that all firefighters have proper equipment. And when we're designing fire stations, we need to set them up so problems don't occur. Like sleeping areas, showering areas, we need to be smart about this. So they're not organized to create problems, okay? I think that's about it. I got a bunch of references here, yay. And I'm gonna stop talking now. So, and if you have questions at the end, I'll be glad to take them.
My name is Joe Catania. My co-researcher is Wendy Becker. We first started looking into bullying in general about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it wasn't until recently we're trying to focus it more so on a specific area. And this particular presentation is on information technology and project management bullying in that area. Okay. So we'll cover 5 things in our presentation, and I know there are some time constraints, so whenever possible I'm going to rush through certain things, but I'll try and convey a complete message throughout the presentation. So we're looking at workplace bullying in IT. Bullying, basically basics 101, so what is bullying 101? And then we did a survey of workers in the business community / students, and we'll see if they were bullied or how they were bullied. And then we'll look at those data results and analysis of that, and then come up with some recommendations specific to the IT project management area. So, as I wrote here, or as we wrote here, there is definitely a culture of bullying in the IT field, without a doubt. Maybe in other fields, but from our research, definitely in the IT field. And we conjecture that technology-intensive jobs may be subject to more workplace bullying. That is our conjecture. We're doing subsequent research to either prove or disprove that. That's what we're going to be working on next. And much of the literature states that IT bullying can lead to poor productivity and definitely higher staff turnover. And many project managers will conclude that once there is a culture or an atmosphere of bullying, Sometimes the only alternative is for the particular victim to simply leave and go find another job. May not be the best, but that's in essence what the literature has been showing us. Okay? And there is definitely some collateral damage with respect to bullying. So the targets of bullying are not only the victims, however, it damages the entire department, and companies can get a bad reputation. That may not seem like a big deal, but if you're talking about, say, a software company in Silicon Valley, possibly San Diego, possibly somewhere here on the East Coast, if a particular community, such as the software community, which is small, gets a bad reputation, they may not be able to actually attract the best employees. Okay, so it's a big deal. Okay, a recent study indicates that 25% more employees are indicating that bullying has happened to them, so it's on the rise. And why is this important? 72, according to the Workplace Institute, in 2014, they identified that 72% of U.S. workers are aware of workplace bullying, 27% have experienced bullying, and 21% have witnessed others being bullied. So these numbers are growing, and it's kind of staggering. So when I think of workplace bullying, obviously, this is Wendy harassing me on the playground for my lunch money, right? So what is workplace bullying? There you go, exactly. It's verbal, and normally I don't read slides, but this one needs to be read. Verbal and nonverbal behaviors and sabotage tactics used over a period of time. Important distinction here. Used over a period of time that negatively impact work performance. That's in essence a standard definition. I know one of the speakers earlier said there's really no agreed upon definition. This institute is trying to formalize that definition. All right? So we basically describe bullying in 4 components. Bullying behaviors, what are some of the characteristics of bullies, characteristics of bullying, and why is there bullying? Again, focusing in IT project management field. Here's some examples of bullying behaviors. So instead of me just reading this, does anything stand out here? Is there anything you'd like to add to this list? Which one pops out the highest to you?
I'm shocked. It's, they're documented with offensive emails. That just shocks me.
That's the one that always pops up to me as well. And here's how I lump that one. I always say email muscles, similar to beer muscles. When I say beer muscles, what do you think that means?
Lots of beer.
Well, yeah, you're in the club, you're drinking beer, you'll pick on the 256'4" guy because you had some beers, right? Same thing with the email, right? Somehow you're stronger when you're having something to hide behind, in this case here, the computer. So yeah, offensive emails. Another speaker talked about staring, rolling your eyes. Again, it's a bullying behavior. This one here, looks like we have found another one. Anyone else want to add to this list or possibly to add, take away from the list? But one that I experienced personally was the threat of punishment for no reason. Again, working as a software engineer. Oh yeah, you come, it happens to be Friday. Are you coming into work tomorrow? It happens to be Saturday. No. Well, I'm going to go tell Gary. That's the VP of engineering, right? So a little bit of a coercion to get me to try and come in on Saturday, right? So again, it's in the effort of trying to save time, just not reading them, but we picked out three ones that kind of rose to the top here. I love this slide, okay? So individual characteristics. I would love to see from a student's point of view, because I know we have quite a few students here. Is there anything here that is maybe counterintuitive to you, that you wouldn't think be the case? And I don't want to give it away. I want to see if you kind of come up with it. Anything. Okay, there's kind of no right or wrong, but is there anything here that stands out to you? Yes?
Victims don't necessarily have to be well liked. They can be ostracized in other ways, and people just continue to pick on them because they're separated.
Separation definitely puts you in a situation where bullying may happen to you more frequently, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Any other student like that? Yeah.
Bullies as hostile. I know that I really liked your presentation about understanding the bullies. I don't think they're trying to necessarily be that. So I think
maybe they're coming from, they don't see it as being hostile, but it does come out as hostile.
Okay. Without a doubt, I guess perception is a big thing, so you may not know you're doing anything hostile to someone else, but it comes out in a hostile, you're perceived as being hostile. Okay? Yes?
With the bullies not looking for social acceptance, I feel like a lot of the times when you are making fun of somebody, like, especially whenever you see somebody bullying somebody, I definitely feel like you're looking for social acceptance.
Okay. See a lot of hands shaking yes and an agreement there. Try one other and then I'll give you my perspective on this. Anything else that pops out, student perspective? Or maybe I should, yeah.
Most bullies think that the victims are weak
That's
and
right.
submissive.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I absolutely agree with you. This is what stood out to me when Wendy and I were doing the literature. Victims, they're not weak. They're not submissive individuals. Generally, they simply don't respond to aggression with aggression. They're generally well-liked employees. They know what they're doing. They have the social skills to work well in teams. And that's just an interesting finding. That's the thing that stands out to me as well. All of these are important, honestly, but to me that stands out the most, victims are not weak. Not weak.
I may have a little bit different perspective, because I see bullies as being insecure. They're looking for that power, and I don't see that they see the victims as weak. I see that they are intimidated by the victims, and the way they can obtain that power and overcome their insecurities is go after that person that intimidates them and lower them in the eyes of others.
very good point.
I have, on a different slide coming up, I concur exactly, we concur exactly what you say there. They're kind of jealous, and they're going after that individual. Exactly right. So we see the
Because
same.
they can.
We see this before because they can. We see the same thing in the research literature as well.
That was my third toxic.
Okay.
Yes.
Exactly
Yep.
that. I think the thing that strikes me about this research, because this slide represents a great deal of research on bullying, and the individual characteristics of both the bullies and the victims, is that there's no one profile.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it's really multivariate, because there's this is quite a complex picture that we're describing here. And so that's why some of the research is kind of striking, that I always thought that victims were people who were weak. And in fact, they're often people who are the most technically skilled, the most, well-versed in the team, who people are jealous of. I thought that was something that was really striking.
I would add to characteristics of bullies that not merely power hungry, but abuse power. This is, which is somewhat of a variation. And also, I would have a corollary to the ethical and honest and the victims, that bullies are often unethical and dishonest and don't think that the rules apply to them.
I've definitely seen that in the research literature as well, both of the items that you mentioned. I definitely see that as well. There's so many different directions in research you can take this. Trying to focus on one or two, that's what we're trying to determine out the best way to go there, absolutely. So, sure. And this is a great segue from what we just talked about. These are hypotheses that have been suggested in the research literature as to the reasons for bullying. Bullies envy the victim's competence or social skills, as was alluded to earlier. The bully is bothered by the victim's ethical behavior. Bully had a vindictive or cruel personality. Victim resisted bully's control. I told you to do X, Y, and Z. You're not doing it the way I want you to do it. Okay? Competition for positions. That's a very prevalent topic in at least the IT project management field, for sure. And aggressors are uncertain about self. Right? So in essence, that leads to jealousy. Right?
So, as did all of you, previous speakers, we looked at the literature and were really intrigued by the the nature, the complexity of workplace bullying, and we decided in an exploratory study to do a survey. So we wanted to build on the existing literature. And we thought, since we're professors, we thought we're best to start but with our students. We were really interested in this young population and with our students, our undergraduate students, whether they had experienced bullying in their, beginning of their workplace career. So we saw what we presented in our literature review, and now we go into our survey. So in terms of a description of our survey, we had, this study looks at 155 students, 81 males and 70 females, both US, and we did have some non-US students as well, age range from 19 to 44 years. And on average, our students worked, quite surprisingly, 5.6 years on average. So undergraduate students, have a lot of work experience. Out of those 155, 70 women and 81 men, and 4 unidentified. And of those 155, 88 stated that they had not been bullied in their work career, but 67 of our young students had been bullied, so quite a large number. We were interested in, gender differences in terms of male-on-male bullying, male-female, etc. And I think, from talking to my labor attorneys, there's an increase in harassment, male-on-male and female-on-female. And we were quite struck by this kind of statistic that women bully other women. But as every category is represented. So, and these are not percentages; these are numbers out of 155 out of those who were bullied. And interestingly, so we wanted to get some time references. How often are you bullied? Again, these are students, and it's interesting that it's a normal curve. So, from once per year, but look at, several students being bullied every day. And so quite interesting with sort of the midpoint there, several times a week or several times a month. Who bullies? 34 of our students were bullied by a supervisor, 40 by a work colleague, or 1 bullied by others. So different. We're interested in that kind of stratification, not just being bullied by your supervisor, but bullied by a peer or someone in the same job position that you are. Okay, now this list comes from Keishley and Newman, an excellent book about bullying in academia. And Rosette, where is she? She used this citation as well. There she is in the back. So we're kind of building on Rosette's work, even though we're just meeting you today. So we were really interested in replicating what Keishley and Newman did with adults, but we wanted to look with our students and see, what is the incidence of bullying with our students. And so here's a list, and again, these are not percentages, these are sheer numbers of the people that were bullied in our sample, what type of bullying occurred. So what jumps out at you? Pick one of those and tell us what you think.
38 and 32, acting in a condescending manner, humiliation through gestures are very similar.
Yeah,
Very, very
so
similar.
just condescending and humiliation through gestures, sarcasm. Yeah, so the highest incidence of bullying. Very similar. And again, we're building on the literature, so we're using the same kind of items that Keishley and Newman did. And any other one that jump out at you?
The lowness of the offensive emails and phone messages.
Okay, so the technology
That
ones
would be higher.
would be higher, yeah?
I did.
Okay.
I think for you saying students.
For students, for a younger
Are these
population.
students in IT or students?
These are general, these are all students.
General
Yeah, these are
students,
business
okay.
students, yeah.
Yeah, I thought.
Not just
So it
IT.
doesn't, it isn't limited to IT.
It isn't just IT,
Okay,
correct.
okay. Yeah, I would expect that to be higher.
And any other comments? Okay, good.
So also as part of the survey, okay, you were bullied, what did you do afterwards? Okay, so you had 19 choices that you could circle. Maybe you did all 19 of them, or maybe you only did one. That's how we read this. So basically this slide and really the next 4 slides kind of go together. These slides are going to be made available on the website, so I'm going to basically walk you through just a subset of them so that you kind of know how to interpret them, okay? So I'm bullied, and I want to do one of these things, or possibly more than one of these things. Okay? So I want to talk to a coworker. From our study, almost 48% talk to a coworker. Okay? So from our sample, 48% talk to a coworker, 39% said it made the situation better, 9% said it made the situation worse. Okay? So each one of those, what did I do, is now broken down into percentages. So we'll look at one more and see which one I want to talk about. Told my supervisor. Okay?
Kind of common recommendation to
Yeah,
talk to the boss.
because you would think, let me go talk to the boss. Well, it looks like only 34% did that. 24 said it made it better. 10% said it made it worse. Okay? I would like to do further research on this one. Why isn't this 100%? And why isn't this 100%, right?
Is the 24% of the 34%?
Yeah.
Or 24% of the total number?
The total number.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because those two add up to
Yep.
34%.
These, yeah, these
Okay.
two add up to that.
Okay.
Of the total sample.
Okay.
You didn't have to just pick one, you could have picked
Right.
any number of the 19. Okay? So, again, trying to make complicated slides less complicated, so if you choose to look at this, you know, on your own. And we'll just go to the next one. Let's see. We'll skip over this one. And all of these. Okay. So this is basically, like I said, those 5 slides all go together, and if you care to look at those slides from the website, that's fine. Let's go to slide number 3. Next one.
I think it's interesting, though, that, you know, some things that you're recommended to do actually make the situation worse, according to the perceptions of our students sample.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, sorry,
Yeah.
one of them was talk to the bully. And
Yeah.
you see online, never do that, it'll
Yeah.
make it worse, but you actually contradict that. Well, you had good news, that it made it better.
Next
Ask
slide,
bully to
other
stop.
direction.
Ask
Yeah.
bully to stop, 21%,
Yeah.
and it made it better for more,
Yeah.
yeah, which goes against what you see online.
And again, this is Keishley and Newman, you know, we didn't make up these items, we are kind of trying to replicate the normative samples in our students. So interesting that some of the things that you're told to do are not effective, or some of the things you're not told to do would be effective.
Okay, so what do IT victims, I should say, what do bullies working in an IT capacity suggest? What is some of their advice? Deal with unintentional bullying through face-to-face meetings, in essence, with the bully, right? That would be the number one, as indicated by the Harvard Business Review. Use external mediators to help handle the situation. That actually goes well with the next slide as well. So we'll look at mediators in a moment. We'll stay right there. Okay. Provide a system for victims to report bullying. Give managers better people skills or better training in handling bullying. And provide a system for employees to contact top management if their direct supervisors kind of aren't solving the problem. So this was the top advice from IT victims. Okay? So take-home message is, what should managers do to deal with or prevent bullying? And there's a large institution out there called the PMI, Project Management Institute, and they come up with these particular suggestions, okay? Create organizational anti-bullying policies, and in essence, you should really hire an expert to provide initial policy advice and to conduct mandatory training company-wide. Number 2 was consider long-term project organization well-being. Since workplace bullying often gets short-term results. I need this done today. You're working 10 hours today, right? So project managers may bully employees into working longer hours to get some results. And it could be tolerated because you're looking at short-term financial gains, but there are long-term impacts, okay? So consider long-term effects, not just short-term monetary gains. Lead by example from the top. Basically, upper-level management champion anti-bullying policies, so it filters downwards. It's another one of their suggestions. Respond to all types of bullying behavior. Bullying often begins with small actions, such as eye rolling. Project managers actually need to address this immediately so that it doesn't progress at a later stage. Okay? Take bullying claims seriously, but tread carefully. Don't assume that these bullying accusations are necessarily always true. It needs to be investigated, and there needs to be a process in place to investigate it, to then determine, did it happen? Did it not happen? Okay, get recommendations from the PMI. And then the last one was an impartial investigator should be kind of engaged to conduct these investigations. Fair treatment for victims, bullies, and witnesses is needed so that you trust in the process, so that an employee would be more willing to say, yes, bullying did occur. Okay? So, probably my favorite slide of the whole presentation, but the numbers tell a lot of info as well. And another good slide.
Okay, so who was first? Go ahead.
First of all, thank you all for your wonderful presentations. So informative. I had a question in specific to Dr. Desanti. When you were doing your research on their perpetrators, was there any question to isolate out or not isolate out target employees who had started out as targets and at some point were converted into being the accused bullies?
So you're
Because that
asking
does
if there
happen.
was a concerted effort to filter those out? Is
Oh,
that what
well,
you're saying?
you studied perpetrators,
Uh-huh.
and I'm saying that one response that some employers have to a target speaking up or complaining about being bullied is to flip it over and to make them accuse them of being the bully.
Yeah.
For their assertions of, I don't like being bullied, I would like to have this stopped, I'm giving you this evidence and this has gone on, and the employer responds by flipping it over and making the target the accused bully.
That does happen.
And then even to the point of forcing the employee out. It's happened to me, actually.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
At the National Labor Relations Board at that.
Oh,
The chairman staff.
yeah, and I did I encounter that? I don't know if I encountered that in my own research, the data I gathered on it for the surveys and all, but I do recall coming across instances in which, in my readings, where people, yes, that say managers holding employees accountable for certain performance plans, for instance, the employee may feel as though they're being picked upon and, micromanaged, and maybe rightly so or unwarrantedly so, file a claim against that manager for bullying. And I've also seen instances in which it's sort of gone the opposite way too, where really who gets labeled as the target or the bully depends on who files the claim first. So it's really hard. That I think maybe earlier in the day, someone made some mention about that fine line between who is the bully and who is the target. Boy, it can just be such the fine line. It's very difficult to know.
Well, especially when the employer is doing all the defining.
Yes. Well, and they've got the power.
Which was the case.
And they've got the power,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I wonder if I could add just another little sentence to that. What I found in my studies was in order to avoid the bullying, they jump on board.
Right.
And so you have a leader who's a bully, you have an employee who's scared, and in order to stop the bullying, they jump on board with the leader, and they undercover bully their coworkers.
First of all, I wanted to say that the profile of bullies that a number of you have come up with seem insanely accurate to me. And the sort of sociopathic or pathological side of it seems very, very accurate. This is all, as a subject, relatively new to me as something to study. And as I was listening to all of this, I wonder if there is a distinction at all. I mean, in some ways, what we're talking about when we're talking about bullies and non-bullies, we're talking about human nature. And if the only way to mitigate the negativity of some human nature is to discuss profit margins, productivity, and creativity, we've fallen into the business is the only way to live kind of thinking, because this all seems so deeply unethical and inhumane that there's a level within me that says our approach and again, this is all, I'm not trying to step on any toes, but that our approach to solutions somehow needs to be broader than business solutions. And it's so deeply concerning to me in a world where poetry worked, for instance, which just blows my mind. But not really, it shouldn't. Obviously, I'm a literature professor. That I guess I would wonder if we have an answer to the idea of our measuring effect in a sense, or a solution effect in a sense, being productivity and money. It's just a broad question, I don't know, and maybe you don't need to answer it, but the damage being done is a damage to humanity. And if they can't be held, and I know, because I've made the same arguments, blah, 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 I know that administrations are never going to respond in terms of humanity and blah, 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 because they just don't. And I just throw that out as an idea of another measuring stick, because I think falling into profit as our measuring stick and as our way to browbeat somebody into being humane is still a short-term solution, to my mind.
Can I address
Yes.
that? Okay. Leadership's really hard.
Yes, it is.
Leaders are, they have to do what their bosses want them to do. Sometimes it's a board of directors, sometimes it's somebody in a regional or a national office. And they're being watched all the time. So it's very hard to set the example every day. A lot of times decisions that you make as a leader is based on 80% of the information that's out there, but to get the other 20% will take way too long.
Yes.
You're accountable for what you do and for what other people do. And I would say that a lot of leaders believe that they're doing the best job that they can. Another issue that leaders have is if you're a leader, you're surrounded by people who are telling you how great you are.
Yes,
And
that's
so you
true.
have to be very careful not to believe your press clippings, okay? You gotta watch out for the sycophants and all that. And you gotta try to do what is right. You gotta try to lead by example. But there's only so much that you see, okay? So that's one aspect. There's a bunch of aspects. The other aspect is, anybody read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Over and over.
Read that. It's a great book. It's still applicable today. People have trouble, just naturally have trouble looking beyond themselves to be empathetic to others. We have trouble, we have to make an effort to do that. It's almost like we don't naturally do that. We're all focused on our own things, okay? And so to get that empathy going takes effort. You have to try to do it. You have to try to be an effective listener, for example, which we're all horrible at, okay? You have to try to do those things. So I think, a lot of leaders are trying. They're doing the best that they possibly can. I do think, though, when we make the argument, and it's sad we have to, but we're fighting human nature here, is like what you're saying. You have to put it in terms that everybody understands. And in business, everybody understands. Reduce productivity. Everybody understands how much money a lawsuit's going to cost me, okay? Everybody understands sick days and how that takes away from productivity and money. And if we, because as a leader, a lot of times you want to focus on absolutes. The light switch is on or off. The person's either late or on time. We either met our goal or we didn't. When you get to the gray areas, John said something to Sally that upset Sally. Okay? Wow, there's a lot of perception there. Another thing that leaders deal with, just as a counter perspective here, is let's say I have to discipline Lisa. Okay? Let's say Lisa's underperforming and I have to discipline Lisa. So we go in, we talk, performance is below expectations, here's what the standard is, how can we help you, that sort of thing. Lisa walks out, says, John is the worst boss ever. He was horrible. John as the leader cannot walk out and say, Lisa failed on these 3 key things. That leader can't do that. And so a lot of times when we hear about issues, we hear about problems, you're hearing one side of it. Just food for thought.
Well, that's, I'm going to answer you, that's absolutely true. But companies, we're assuming some rationality here, but there are institutions and companies that no matter what the state policy is or what their own policy on their books happen to be, are very, throw a dart which one we're going to apply when. Throw a dart when we're going to follow through on this. And we like you, so we're not going to do it for you, but you've been in trouble, so we're going to do it for you. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, and there, I used to work in business too. It's hard to find sanity and rationality as an operating system from what I've seen. And maybe it's just I have a cloud over my head and wherever I walk it becomes insane. That's also possible. But it is a very interesting process watching as an outsider with all of these logical and wonderfully rational approaches and we're going to fix this and all of that, when so much of what we're dealing with is deep neurosis or inability to function in rational ways.
And I don't want to cut it short, but I do want to get to the last question.
I'm sorry.
And this is a huge issue to talk about, and I hope people will stick around, because I actually definitely want to address some of the last statements if I get the chance. But Jeff, real quickly on the last question, and we'll just have 30 seconds to answer it. Whoever wants to jump in first.
Okay, this is just more of a general question. One thing I thought interesting was in Dr. DeSanti's work, the mid-age was, I think it was 50.
55.
And one thing that seemed common was women bullying women or something with that. I was wondering, is the problems within the same age group or the same generation, or is it cross-generational?
I think it's across generations, but I didn't look at that primarily as a focus, and I didn't have that ability to discern who was which age, and you almost get to a point where you have to assess level or severity of bullying even too. So that wasn't the intent behind, but my belief is it exists across generations. Maybe some of the other families.
I would agree.
Well, yeah, we were struck by seeing it in our young students.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the women on women, men on men, yeah. So we did see it in our students.
And you had a wide, you guys cited that wide
Yeah.
age range
Yeah.
too, yeah.
I think it's cross-generation as well, as you believe, I believe as well. Need to do a little further analysis and validate that, but yeah.
Good question to end on before we get to our keynote. And want to thank the last two panels. And